If I could turn back time, doo-doot. If I could find a way, doo-doot. I'd take back those words that hurt you, and you'd stay. If I could turn back time indeed, and that's exactly what we'll be doing in the Forgotten City. That's right, it's time for a cool time looping story. I love a good time loop, but they're pretty rare to find done well, so I was pretty excited to play this game when it came out back in 2021. We're going to be venturing back into some ancient Roman society where they have been bound to follow something called the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule being, if anyone in the town commits a sin, all members of the society will be turned to gold right where they stand. We've got a hot tip that someone is just about to commit a sin, and it's up to us to figure out who it is and stop them. Also, this game was originally written and developed as a Skyrim mod that got turned into a standalone game after its initial success, which is just pretty neat. I hope you enjoy The Forgotten City. I also want to hop in here real quick before we get into the video and thank everybody that's visited the channel since we put up the Kill It With Fire video. That video has been doing really great, and it's still doing pretty great, honestly. There's a lot of subs coming in every day, and I just want to say thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Now let's get on to the video. On the main menu of the game here, we get a little bit of a warning to content creators to give a little bit of a spoiler warning because this game is so narrative driven. It'll be kind of hard to play it after you've watched this video, so just want to throw that in here because they specifically asked for it, and I will throw that in right before the white hallway bit as they suggested as well. The game begins with us waking up in present day, which is pretty interesting considering from the cover and everything that we know about this game, it seems like it's going to be happening in ancient Rome. But we get our answers in a minute here. First, we find that we've been rescued by a woman named Karen, who found us floating out in the river and has pulled us ashore and sought to rescue us. We complete a pretty bare bones character creation system that really only affects slight dialogue things, and then we move on to the class selection, which includes such great class options as can run a little bit faster, be a little bit healthier, and owns a gun. I went with the fourth class background option, the archaeologist, because I kind of thought it would give me some extra insight into figuring out the mystery of the game, but other than a couple dialogue choices, this really doesn't make a difference. I probably should have picked the gun one or the speed one. Karen tells us that we were found floating along the river along with some other guy named Al. And Al woke up first and went to investigate some Roman ruins that are hidden out behind us. So Karen's a little bit worried because Al should have been back by now, so she wants us to go in and investigate and make sure everything is going alright there. Karen gives us a cool flashlight and we are on our way out into the ruins. As we begin to walk down the only trail available, we find some sort of ancient ruin with a note from Al on it. So we walk in to check out what's going on when suddenly the floor falls out below us and we fall down this big pit into a pool of water down below. So now we seem to be right in the thick of it, and we're wandering through these ancient ruins and seeing a lot of golden statues, which seems kind of out of place because these aren't statues that they were praying to or decorative in any way. It seems like they were trying to escape whatever happened to these ruins. Very weird. But as we continue to press further, we find a very peculiar sight. We find an old man dressed in modern clothing hanging from the ceiling. This is clearly Al, and he's left a note to us warning us to stop from going any further, but there's no backtrack at this point. We have to keep going. When we reach the back of the ruins, we step into a glowing ball of light and get a quick Jimmy Neutron brain blast to the past. We step outside of our shrine and discover that those ruins we were walking through are no longer ruins. We have successfully gone back in time, and first we come face to face with our best friend down here, Galerius. He will greet us at the start of every one of our time loops and be equally confused about who we are and why we're coming out of the shrine. He tells us we need to go meet some guy named the Magistrate. We learn that the Magistrate is a guy named Cynthius, and on our way up to his villa, we get introduced to another character named Cynthia, his daughter. And after talking to her for a minute, we find that one of the big mysteries of this game is that her sister, Scintilla, has gone missing sometime in the last couple weeks. People are assuming she's escaped, but that might have broken the golden rule and turned everybody to gold, so clearly it's not that, and she's just gone missing or been kidnapped somewhere, so that's something we'll need to figure out later. Before we talk to the Magistrate, we take one more pit stop into his bedroom. We find a chest with some gold in it, and naturally I want to grab some of that. But we find that the rules actually apply to us as well. We hear a voice tell us that the many shall suffer for the sins of the one, and people begin to get turned into statues, so we have to run back to the shrine, and we get looped back through time. So we made a little bit of a mistake there. I kind of thought the rules weren't going to apply to me, but I guess they do. But hey, at least we earn our first achievement looper for looping through time once. And another benefit is that we learned stepping out of the shrine this time, we got a little bit of a shortcut through some conversations we've already had. We can basically cut them off and say we've already done this before and skip right to the new stuff. So Cynthius tells us a couple important things here. He gives us the explanation of the golden rule in simple terms. If anyone in this city commits a sin, everyone will be turned to gold. Someone in this city is going to commit a sin today, so the god Proserpina has sent us back from our time to loop through this day until we can prevent it and save everyone. There's an election for magistrate occurring today that Cynthius fears he's going to lose, and when we prevent the sin from occurring, we will create a time paradox, so we don't need to come back, launching us back to our time. Really simple stuff. So with a couple mysteries already in mind, it's time for us to set out and try to start putting some of the pieces together. Our first stop is to the infirmary, where we meet a woman named Lucretia, who is looking after a woman who just came in poisoned. And this woman is going to die if she doesn't get the resin of a plant. But it seems like somebody living in the city has been price gouging this life-saving medicine, and since we don't have it on us right now, the lady dies. But thankfully, this is a time loop, so maybe we can find some of that and do this better later. After some issues, we loop back in time one more time, this time skipping Galerius's dialogue, earning us the achievement Maverick, because we don't need to do all of that again this time. We meet a character named Dooley, who has been locked up in jail after he was found trying to break into something called the High Cistern. So he has an idea that maybe if we get Galerius elected as magistrate at the next election, maybe he can let Dooley out and he'll give us the key to the High Cistern that we need. So there's a little bit of an alternate path that we'll be looking to do later. We meet a cowering woman named Fabia who tells us somebody has just broken into the bathhouse and he has a weapon and he's going to come in here and break the golden rule if we don't do something. We don't really know what we're getting ourselves in for here, but we tell Fabia that we will go take care of it. But then Fabia goes to hide and things don't go super great for her. She runs into this empty shrine, but the shrine is a little bit broken and it collapses immediately when she runs inside. But that does give us information at least. As we're looking around the bathhouse area, I accidentally find a secret little path that isn't super secret, but we weren't supposed to find it yet for sure. Once we reach the caves underneath, we earn the achievement Archaeologist, and we find that there's a hermit philosopher living down here, but he asks us a question that we don't know the answer to yet, who created the golden rule, so he doesn't really have anything for us at the moment. We'll be back though. So we leave the caves and finally go to confront the armed man in the bathhouse. He's armed with a bow, which will be pretty interesting for us because we've already had somebody ask if we can find a bow. But first off, this guy tells us that he's looking for someone named Quinius who is wanted by the Roman Empire. He's committed some sort of terrible crime and apparently he's hiding down here. So maybe we can figure out who that is, but we'll also need to take this guy out first. But this guy's armed and dangerous, and he doesn't really like that we don't know who Quinius is yet, so he moves to attack us, which of course triggers the golden rule, forcing us to loop through time again. Next we meet up with a vessel priestess named Equitea. So she has a couple very important pieces of information for us. First, if we want to get Galerius elected as magistrate, we need to convince Malleolus to drop out of the election. So we'll be looking into that in the future. But she is also the person that runs the election in the first place, so we choose to start the election now because we can convince her to do that. So we'll be able to check out what happens at the normal end of day proceedings a little bit early. Before we check out those election proceedings though, we go ahead and talk to the barkeeper Aurelia. She isn't a super important character, but she does give us the achievement Smooth Talker for getting rejected when we tried to flirt with her. Can't win them all. So because we took that little detour out to the bar, we ended up missing a little bit of the election proceedings, but we get here just in time to figure out what the inciting incident of the golden rule breaking is. When Malleolus gets elected as magistrate, he informs his goon to attack Cynthius, killing him as revenge for convincing all of the people that the golden rule exists. What Malleolus doesn't know is that the Golden Rule does exist, and when he does that, he triggers the end of the world, and we have to return and loop back through time. But now we know that Malleolus is the one that causes it, and we need to figure out a way to get him to not be elected magistrate. On the next day, we decided to go up and start exploring some of the more cliffside venues up in this city. And here we meet a woman named Octavia, who is working as a servant for Malleolus, but she isn't the really important thing here. What is important is that there's a guy named Ulpius who is right behind her, who is about to jump to his death, which in theory should violate the Golden Rule, so we should probably try to stop him from doing that. We give it a shot, but we can't stop him from jumping on our first try, but we do get a little hint about Scintilla here. We stop to admire the Washington Monument and realize, shockingly, that doesn't break the Golden Rule. But we've been hearing some whispers from the statues this whole time, and they tell us to jump after him. So naturally, we do. We jump and plunge down into this hole below, earning us the achievement High Diver. And it just so happens that doing that high dive has allowed us to land right inside of Malleolus's villa. And we try to convince him to drop out of the election, but we're going to need a little bit more information to be able to blackmail him out, so we'll come back to this later. And we grab a key to his house so we can ensure that we can. And we're in a new time loop now, so we can return to Fabia, this time telling her not to go into that broken shrine, which saves her life and earns us the achievement Trickster. But that also means that the crumbling shrine is still intact when we talk to the armed man, so we tell him that we just saw Quintius in there and he should go check it out. So of course, when the assassin walks into the shrine, it topples down on top of him, which allows us to loot his body, obtaining his bow, and also his search orders to come find this guy named Quintius. The notice calls out that he has 2 different colored eyes, and we just happened to talk to a guy with 2 different colored eyes a minute ago. One thing about this city is that there are no weapons allowed to help prevent people from breaking the Golden Rule. But now that we have this bow, we get approached by this guy named Decius, who tells us we should take our bow and replace it with the golden bow in the shrine to Diana so that we can create infinite golden items and get rich quick. After that, Equitia asked us to gather some information about how all of the people that we've met in this city got here, so we went around asking for specifics, and there were a couple things that we found in common. Everyone that is living in this city had a similar story of how they ended up here. Somebody found them floating down a river passed out. They pulled them to the side, the person was wearing a hood, and they took a coin from them. And we also learned that the person that pulled us out of the water isn't named Charon, they were named Karen, the ferryman of the dead. So, Karen takes the coins that we had on us and exchanges them to help us cross the River Styx into the Underworld. Here we earn the achievement The Bloodless Shadow for learning about this little issue. So that explains a little bit, but it also opens up a new issue. Us and everyone else here are dead. We have been sent to the Underworld, and we need to figure out why. We do earn the achievement Underworld Explorer, though, for having done something. I'm not sure why this achievement procced here, to be honest with you. Equitia has a couple ideas for ways that we could potentially try to return ourselves back to the surface, including confronting the god of the underworld Pluto head-on, or maybe trying to find some sort of spirit guide that can help guide us out of the underworld. If we were interested in trying to confront the god of the underworld, we could maybe try to rebuild that broken obelisk that we saw up at the top of the city. To do that, we would need to find the 4 plaques that have been destroyed and distributed around that were originally up there. 1 Greek, 1 Roman, 1 Egyptian, and 1 something else. But if we want to go the spirit guide path, we do have all of these statues whispering to us in the same voice. We theorize that that could be Proserpina, the goddess of the underworld who is trying to guide us to our escape. So a couple things to look into. I figured let's get started working on some of those plaques that were mentioned. So first, let's look for the Egyptian one. There was only 1 Egyptian guy living in the city. His name was Kabash, and he seems to have gone missing. So let's do some investigation under the city. Now that we know the creator of the Golden Rule is Pluto, we can answer the Hermit Philosopher's question, which allows him to get into some deep philosophical debate that we don't really need to include. But he gives us a key to go down into some catacombs further beneath his base. but he warns us that we're going to experience some crazy stuff that we might not believe. We begin to get a little bit of a taste of what he was warning us about when we venture down into the catacombs and find that some of the golden statues down here appear to be alive still. They can kind of chase us down and we can kick them, but we can't really handle them quite yet. Eventually, though, we make our way down to the bottom and we find Kabosh, who tells us that he does in fact have the Egyptian plaque on him, and because we tell him that we're planning on returning it to a place of glory, he hands it over, and that is that. And then we learn that he also has found the 4th unknown plaque as well. Great, a 2-for-1. Except he doesn't want to give us this one. We're now down in the Egyptian underworld, and we've found that the underworlds have been built on top of each other. The Egyptian one is underneath the Greek one is underneath the Roman one, but this Egyptian one isn't the final layer. There's a layer below us that belongs to this plaque. And Kabosh isn't taking it super well that his culture seems to have taken the concept of the underworld and the gods as they existed from another culture, just like the Greeks and Romans did to his own. So, not wanting this great disgrace to get out, Kabosh takes the 4th plaque and throws it down to the deep below, but naturally we gotta hit the Weevil Underwood and dive down and get that plaque for ourselves. So we make our way through the underworld. This isn't actually too difficult, we're basically just walking through a little bit of a maze, but we dodge 3 boulders and earn ourselves the achievement Nimble. So returning to the surface, it's time to do the other quest where we're switching out our bow for the Statue of Diana bow, and we get the golden bow without too much issue, but then we find that Decius has double-crossed us, locking us in here. So we turn this beehive to gold and bust through the floor. And once we jump down into the cave below, we earn the achievement Unhygienic for picking up a sponge on a stick. That was pretty gross and an accident. We learn that all living things can be turned to gold via this bow, which earns us the achievement Golden Archer, and I'm not talking McDonald's. After we make our way through the caves, we find ourselves in one of the big locked palaces in the city, and this is absolutely crawling with these living golden statues that are labeled peeled. It turns out that the city's doctor named Navia came up here into the palace and has been performing weird experiments where she's trying to save the people trapped within the golden statues. She's been peeling the gold off of them to try to save a woman that's trapped in there, but anyway, we earn the achievement Survivor for escaping the palace. After the golden rule gets procced from the election, we take that opportunity to steal some gold from Decius's chest and earn the achievement Grave Robber. After we come back from that loop, we learn that we can tell Galerius at the start to go take care of some of the tasks that we've already figured out how to do in the loop, such as stopping Fabia from entering the temple. This will be extremely useful later on. After that, we use the money that we just stole from Decius to purchase the medicine that he has been hoarding. That's revenge for locking us in that temple. So we take our medicine over to Lucretia, which allows her to save Yulia in this time cycle, and this is one of the positive outcomes, and we also earn the achievement Medic for our trouble. After that, we return to our cliff jumper Ulpius, and now that we've done this conversation, we know how to talk him out of jumping. We also pay to get him released from Malleolus's bondsmanship, which earns us the achievement Counselor. After that, we get some treasure that was inaccessible until we got our golden bow, earning us the achievement Treasure Hunter. Then we earn the achievement Avid Reader for reading 10 pieces of graffiti hidden throughout the city. And after exploring some random caves, we actually come across the Roman plaque, which I was not expecting, but hey, we've got it now. Now we're kind of running out of places to explore, so we head into the lower cistern, assuming the final plaque might be in here maybe? And as we push a little bit deeper in, we find that there are a series of vines leading all the way up some sort of well shaft thing that we're able to turn golden and climb up. When we reach the top, we see somebody chained up in the distance, and we earn the achievement Italian Plumber for reaching the higher cistern in an unusual way. We go to talk to the captive, and we learn that this is Scintilla, the daughter of the magistrate that went missing so early on. We learn that the magistrate has actually taken her prisoner because she found a way out of the city and it was going to break the golden rule. We earn the achievement Sleuth for solving this mystery here, but now what are we gonna do? We decide to let Scintilla go with the plan of the two of us escaping the city together, and we manage to free her just in time as Cynthius comes walking down the stairs to confront us. And then we learn that he actually remembers the time loops as well. He also remembers Al coming through and looping over and over again, being unable to solve the mystery, until eventually he took matters into his own hands. He gave us an impossible task to loop through time over and over again because at least he gets to live forever in this one day that he had left. But we've figured out what to do, and then Scintilla strikes, getting revenge on her father for taking her prisoner in an extremely graphic death scene. But having killed him, the final golden rule is procced, and just as we're about to escape, we find that we have created a time paradox which launches us back to the future. So when we get launched back up, we find that we have come into contact with Al Worth before he ever entered the temple, so he has no idea about any of the things that we discovered. Then we return to the bank to have our confrontation with Karen, who tells us that we were exploring some Roman ruins when we found a couple of coins. But as we were leaving, we were attacked by some thieves. A nearby hiker helped out named Al Worth, but both of us died in the struggle. But we happened to have 2 coins on us at the time of our death, which allowed us to be ferried into the Underworld. But now that no one's left in the Underworld, we can be returned to the land of the living. When we agree for Karen to take us back to the Overworld, we earn the achievement The One That Got Away, which is ending 2 of 4, meaning we've got 3 more endings that we need to go back and figure out. So we get our credit roll here, but obviously we are at 20 out of 40 achievements, so we have a lot left that we need to work on. And honestly, I was not expecting the game to end there. I was going into that lower cistern, and we just happened to find the big twist of the game. Well, one of the big twists of the game. We still have quite a lot that we need to uncover, 3 more endings, and we haven't even seen Galerius get elected magistrate yet, plus a ton of little things that we've yet to see. So it's time for us to go back into the game with a couple more characters and take on everything else that the game has left. But first we're going to reload back into that original save to finish out everything that we can do there. So first things first, we load back to the point before we freed Scintilla from her captor, and this time we tell her no can do, we can't let her go. But now that we know the secret, we can take matters into our own hands, coming up to Cynthius and just shooting him straight with the bow, which will, of course, create a paradox, launching us to the future. So that was a little bit out of character, and it is the absolute worst ending, but we do get the achievement The Many Shall Suffer for doing that. Pretty quick though. After that we decide to make some quick money, but we also earn the achievement Kleptomaniac in the process for stealing to trigger the golden rule 5 times. Another one of the side plots that we need to solve is that there's a guy named Rufius who has been kind of bullying and threatening this guy named Virgil. So once we figure out what was going on with Rufius and treat his rheumatism that was kind of the root cause of his problems, he decides that he's not going to bother Virgil anymore, and once we tell Virgil that, we earn the achievement Lion Tamer. So after that, it's time to look into getting Malleolus to drop out of the election, and the way we opt to do that is through talking to his wife. Turns out she didn't know about this whole Quintius thing, so we're able to convince her to hand a note over to us, which we can use to force him to drop out of the election. As we can see, 2 eyes, 2 different colors, so we know that he is responsible for burning down Rome, and we can use that to make him drop out. We go to tell Galerius the good news, but he's having some of his alone in the field time, and he doesn't want to talk to us right now. Then he finishes up his alone time and we tell him the good news, and he understands that now that Malleolus has dropped out, it's up to him to complete this run for magistrate. So we tell Equitia that we're ready for the election to start, and because we've been sending Galerius out to do all of our little tasks helping people out around the town, everyone has changed their vote to vote for him, and he gets elected. His first act as magistrate is to free Dooley from his cell, which earns us the achievement Liberator. So we enter into Dooley's cell and grab the Greek plaque that we've been after. I kinda thought that this was going to be one of the endings of the game, but it turns out that as soon as Dooley gets released, he walks over and steals something which triggers the golden rule, so this can't be a canon ending. But at least now we have all 4 plaques in hand, so we can put all of these into the obelisk, which will allow us to enter this big locked temple at the top. So it's time for us to face off against whatever is inside of the Great Temple. This is also where the white hallway bit occurs, so they warned us about this at the beginning. If you don't want spoilers at this point, you should probably stop, just as they warned. We walk into this giant throne room that is got this really crazy futuristic vibe to it, and we come face to face with Pluto, earning us the achievement Herculean. Here we learn that the gods made contact with the humans, but the humans weren't up to the gods' standards, so they decided to return back to Elysium, except for the goddess Proserpina, who gave up her godhood to come and live with the humans. But Pluto wasn't a fan of that, so he locked her in a kind of frozen state until he would be able to return to Elysium with her. But she's a human now, and humans aren't allowed in Elysium, so the gods made a bet. If Pluto could live in this city for 1 year without anybody breaking any sins, she would be allowed to return. And we haven't really been doing super great at that. We make some comments that Pluto isn't super happy about, so he decides to attack us. But Proserpina instructs us to attack her, breaking her and releasing her crown that we can grab and use in a future loop. So we flee from the gods' chambers, running all the way back to our original spawn point, and it just so happens that on this loop, we earn the achievement Super Looper for looping through time 10 times in one game. We go have a quick chat with the Hermit Philosopher, where we earn the achievement Fibber for lying 10 times. There were only 1,000 obols to the Underworld distributed out to civilization, and us and Al had the final 2. So it's really important that we get this absolutely right, because we're the last human that can do the bet. We take the crown of Proserpina back to the god of the Underworld and threaten him. We tell him basically that we're going to kill her over and over again until he releases us from the loop and lets us return, which earns us the achievement Psycho because we were brave enough to try to threaten the god of the Underworld, and it actually worked. So the god of the Underworld agrees to release the hold over the Golden Rule and allows us to return back to our time, breaking the paradox. So we return back and have our conversations with Al and Karen, and I was a little bit concerned that it seemed like we were gonna get mostly the same ending no matter what ending of the game you actually went with, and that would have been kind of disappointing. But fortunately for us, we actually do a 1-year time jump, and we seem to be in some sort of museum. We find our pal Al in the museum, and he tells us that he's been doing some research on these people that existed 2,000 years ago. And he tells us to have a look around and meet him at the back. So as I was walking around, I was gonna make a joke about how this guy is at his first day of standing school until they start talking to me and I realize that it's Galerius and Equitia. It turns out that apparently everybody was actually sent back to our time instead of their own time after the Golden Rule was broken, and Pluto sent everybody back. We earn the achievement the Oracle for saving as many people as possible and getting them all into the museum at the end of the game. Now, I don't want to say anything about Pluto's abilities, but I don't know that it was the best idea to send all of these people 2,000 years into the future, but they all seem to be doing pretty well, so I guess who am I to judge? Just seems like it'd be bad. When we make it down to the other end of the museum, after talking to everybody, we come face to face with Proserpina, former goddess of life and renewal, who gave up her godship, so now she is also immortal, just like everybody else living in the world. And we also learned that she created the time loop because it was so important for us to get this job done when we did. Then we get the big reveal that all of the golden statues were actually returned to our world, and we have become the 5th ever person to escape from the Underworld, which earns us the achievement The Canon Ending, because it's the canon ending. We have one more ending that we can get on this save file though. We go back to Scintilla, but we don't free her. Instead, we go back up to the surface and re-loop through time. Then when we come back, at the start of the day, we tell Galerius to go and collect as many people as he can to escape. So then we return to where Scintilla was being held, allowing her to kill the magistrate again. We once again create a paradox where we loop back into the future, everything else goes the same, except this time we earn the achievement The Ones That Got Away because we allowed a couple of people to escape, but not everybody. Next up, we have a couple more miscellaneous achievements we can knock out on this save. There's a whole romance angle between Galerius and Equitia that I completely missed, but we go back and do it, earning the achievement Matchmaker. We pick a specific dialogue option and allow Fabia to die in the collapsing ruins, earning us the achievement Callous. We go into photo mode to earn the achievement Tourist. And then we go back to redo the canon ending and the conversation with Pluto, but we pick some specific dialogue prompts that we didn't quite do the first time, earning us the achievement Silver Tongue. Next up, we start with a new character named Pink with a gun, and this time we're picking the class that has a gun. No prizes for guessing what we're going to do with this gun. We immediately take that gun and march our way up to the villa and shoot Cynthius right away, which earns us the achievement, ironically, Law-Abiding Citizen, for completing the game in one loop. This is once again the worst ending possible, but it was the quickest way to get this done, so can you blame me? Next up, we re-enter the Shrine of Diana, where we stole the bow and die to hornet stings, which earns us the achievement Allergic. Completely missed this as well. And rounding off the things that I completely missed, there is an achievement called Striker for knocking over the golden statues with a kick. Completely missed this mechanic as well. And now with the golden bow in pocket, we use that to climb our way up the cistern like we did the first time to free Scintilla. But this time Scintilla doesn't need to go for the kill because we can shoot the magistrate ourselves, which earns us the achievement Deadshot for freeing Scintilla and killing her captor with a gun. And now we are at 39 out of 40 achievements, so we re-roll our character one more time to be Pink but fast. This time we go through the game basically the same as before, but we need to do it in as few loops as possible. So I actually did kind of a different route where we didn't do the golden bow stuff at all, and we still got to this same point, which is pretty cool that you can do it multiple ways. But eventually when we get to the end, we earn the achievement Minimalist, and now we have done every single thing in the Forgotten City. So how did we do? HowLongToBeat.com has the Forgotten City listed at 10.5 hours to 100%, and we took 10.7 hours, so pretty much dead on. We could have done things a little bit quicker, and I probably used way more loops than I needed because I did steal a lot of stuff that I probably could have done without, but you know, it is what it is. That's what you're doing when you're living in one of these games. I really enjoyed a lot of what this game was going for. It definitely did feel at times kinda like that old school Skyrim clunkiness, but that is what they were going for, obviously, so it was pretty cool. I think that this is a game that, you know, maybe after you've watched this video, maybe not right away, but hey, maybe in a year or, you know, a couple months, maybe you go back and check out this game because it was really sick to explore this game, finding out things as you went. We really didn't get a chance to look at a lot of the little character interactions and things like that because we just didn't have time in a short video like this, but exploring the world and not just having the answers given to you was a super cool way to attack this game. So I would definitely give this game a hard recommend, and I hope you will give this video a hard recommend. I don't know what that means. But if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate you liking, subscribing, or maybe leaving a comment on the next game that you would like to see me play. I hope you enjoyed The Forgotten City, and I hope to see you next time.
See ya!